Hello, and thank you for joining Tarrant Small Business Development Center today as we discuss PPP forgiveness, the rules and regulations. We will also be talking about the requirements and including a lot of the different application forms and supporting documents and tax issues you may have regarding your PPP loan. Bringing that today with us will be Cindy Largent. And by the way, I'm Catherine Pena, CARES Act Small Business Development Center Business Advisor, and my partner in crime is Cindy Largent. Hey, Cindy.
Hi, Catherine.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. We're
Hey,
ready to talk about PPP forgiveness.
let's do it. So I hand off to you.
All righty. Okay, so PPP was a program that was created through SBA. It was a brand new program to help keep people on the payroll for COVID. So payroll is really the central focus. Things you have to keep in mind was to keep people on the payroll. And so, of course, there's been a lot of changes within the PPP program. We had different legislation that changed things within the program. So we're going to have a little disclaimer that this is for the information that we have to date, the information that we're providing. Of course, we are CARES Act business advisors with the Tarrant Small Business Development Center. So at any time, feel free to put a question in the chat, or Catherine will also have our contact information and you can contact us and we can go into more detail with your specific situation as we're just going through this fairly quickly and in general terms. So everything that we're giving you here is not going to be maybe necessarily answer all your questions specifically. So with that to start, PPP, the requirement was 60% of the funds that you had to be spent on payroll, and the other 40% had to be spent on eligible expenses. And those eligible expenses changed on what was eligible depending on if you were PPP round 1 or PPP round 2. So it's really important to understand when you're asking for forgiveness, which program you're asking for forgiveness for and what additional expenses you were using depending on the timing. And so that is really, really important to understand. So if you received your PPP in 2020, there was also some rules on when you needed to spend that money. And so some of you, if you had a PPP earlier, December 31st of 2020, all your funds had to be spent by that point. Everybody else, it is your covered period. That's the other thing that changed. And so we're going to talk about the different time periods in a second. So it's really important to know when you were funded, when that money was, when your PPP was approved and that money was put in the bank, because that is the beginning of what we call your covered period. And with the new legislation and everybody who's looking for forgiveness of PPP2, you got to choose. Before it was 8 or 24 weeks. Now it's somewhere in between 8 and 24 weeks. So in the initial PPP and PPP round 1, some of you had what we called an alternative covered period. And that was because originally, if you were on that 8-week, because of the timing of your loan, you could look at your payroll. And it was a matter of if your payroll fell in between of when you could use those payroll funds and whether or not they would apply towards that 60%, whether it was going to be eligible. So you could have an alternative cover period. But when they changed that in legislation from 8 to 24 weeks and you got to choose, then that went away. So you don't have that option. It's going to be whatever that covered period is that you choose. And you as the borrower get to choose that. And so if you are a seasonal employee, there's a reference period. And so if you do have a business where you have seasonal workers, that's something you want to talk to us about. If you need to find out when that covered period is. So the important thing is you have to know your covered period. Why is that important? Because all your funds have to be spent within that covered period. So you cannot go beyond it. So if you choose 8 weeks, then you need to use all those funds in 8 weeks. And if it's 24, then, within that 24-week period. Remember, you have to meet the criteria of that 60/40. The other thing is remember, this is PPP. It was protecting payroll, so protecting the number of people you had on your payroll. So if you kept people on your payroll during the time of your covered period, then your forgiveness is not going to be reduced. But if you did not keep your employees on the payroll and you reduced the number of employees or you reduced their wages within that covered period, then your forgiveness amount could be reduced. Now, why do I say could be? Because they're safe harbors. And safe harbors are put in place because there are things outside of a business's control where they couldn't possibly meet those obligations. So, in order to do that, though, you have to meet the criteria of the safe harbor. So, if your business was shut down during that covered period because of CDC health guidelines, whether it be the county, the state, if those were out of your control, Health and Human Services, during that 8-week period, of course, you were going to have to reduce or have no employees. But here's the caveat. You've got to make sure that you're watching that covered period and you have documentation for everything to show that you are claiming that safe harbor. And if you look at the long form, the 3508, which is the long form, if you have a reduction in employees or you have a reduction in wages, there's a worksheet that you need to complete. That's part of that form. So it's important to know those things. Now, we have a lot of small businesses that didn't have any reduction in employees, or they don't have employees. It's a one-man show or two-man, and I should say two-person. Sorry, we're going to make that across the board. It could be a woman because we have a lot of small businesses owned by women. So if you are a one-person business, sole proprietorship, or an independent contractor, and when PPP2 opened, you were included in that group. So our independent contractors, our 1099s, they were able to apply for PPP for themselves. And so if you have a PPP loan that's under 150,000 and below, you're going to do our 3508S, which is the simplest of forms, or this is the latest update beginning in August, early August. SBA created a direct forgiveness portal. So if your lender subscribed to using this service, then you can go, Catherine's got the link up there, you can go to that link and you can complete your forgiveness form through that portal. Now, the process of that forgiveness is once you submit your forgiveness application. Now, remember, you got the loan through a lender. It wasn't through SBA Direct. This is an SBA sponsored program. They're guaranteeing loans. That's the connection with SBA. They're administrating the program, but the loan goes through a lender. So you went to a lender. So your forgiveness goes to that lender. But we had so many of our smaller banks and small lending institutions that do not have the technology to handle the quantity of forgiveness applications. So what SBA did, they came in to say, we've got to make sure everybody gets forgiveness in a timely manner. Now, why is that? Remember I said the covered period is important. It's not important just for when you have to spend the money. It's also important because your payments are deferred during 10 months. So you have your covered period, your covered period ends. So from that last day of your covered period, the next day it starts counting. You have 10 months to ask for forgiveness and have your payments deferred. You
Hey,
have,
Cindy,
yeah,
we are giving everybody a lot of information.
we
I just
are.
want to make sure that if you have any questions during this live session, please put them in the chat. We'll answer them if we can today, or we'll get to them later. And also, if you want to talk to us about your covered period and which would be most beneficial for your business, you can call us at 817-515-2600 and meet with a business advisor as we go through this. Now, this knowledge here for you today is hopefully helpful for you to continue on with your process and hopefully give you information to questions you might have today. Back to you.
All right. Thanks. Because, I can go on and on about all this stuff. I'm one of those strange people that it's exciting because it's helping our small businesses and it's a way to do it. So let's talk about the covered period again and talk about the other reason it's important. And that is from, you have your covered period. But as I was saying, the day after that covered period, so from that last day, you have 10 months where your payments are deferred. Now, you have until the entire time up to your maturity date to ask for forgiveness. But what happens after that 10-month expiration is you need to start making payments on that loan. So that's why it's so important you know the end date of that covered period, because that also determines the time period in which you need to ask for forgiveness and defer payment and not have to pay as a loan until you go back and ask for forgiveness. So really, really important. Dates are so important. And knowing what your costs are associated with payroll eligible expenses when you have employees. So that is really, really critical. Now, for self-employed independent contractors, you got 2.5 months based upon your line 7, your Schedule C line 7. And so if you got 2.5 months, that's 11 weeks. So you can ask for forgiveness. Now, the cool thing is with that direct portal, we're going to go back to that direct portal now, because you have to choose a form in which to ask for forgiveness. And it really depends on your situation. So it depends on your very specific needs in your business and what happened with those employees and those expenses. Now, that 150,000 and below, if you can do it through the direct portal, you go in, you go to the link that we shared. You're going to go in, you're going to create an account, you're going to register your account, and then you're going to enter in your EIN number or Social Security, whatever you used for your PPP loan, and you're going to put your amount in. And then SBA is going to go out and it's going to find your loan, and you're going to ask for forgiveness. You're going to follow. It's a really simple process. It's awesome. And then it will tell you whether or not they're going to require you to upload documents, because you're going to self-certify that you're meeting the criteria for your PPP forgiveness. Okay, so just remember, even though you're self-certifying, you don't have to send something. At any point in time, you can get audited, and you're going to have those documents. So keeping your documentation is extremely important for this PPP. But through that direct portal, you're done. It goes to the lender, gets approved, goes to SBA, gets approved, and then you're done. But if you go through that direct portal, it's going to tell you whether or not you need documentation. So say you don't go to the direct portal. There's 3 forms. I kind of mentioned a couple of them. You have 3508S, 3508EZ, and then your long form. Your long form has worksheets and all that. That's going to deal with safe harbors. That's going to be the 3508S. The other 2 forms is going to be dependent upon your specific situation, what you need. Now, you're going to be going through your lender with those forms, and your lender is going to let you know what documentation they're going to require for each one of those. So what are some samples of documentation that you might need? Of course, you're going to need payroll records. Payroll records are extremely important because, of course, it's PPP. Payroll is really the the driving force. So you're going to need those. Your 941s. What's a 941? If you have employees, 941 are your quarterly tax filings. So you're going to need those. Any unemployment insurance filings, retirement health benefits. You're going to need all those related to payroll. And then if you are using eligible expenses, mortgage, electricity, you want to have your bills, you want canceled checks, anything to show that those were expenses that you paid. Remember, they all have to be dated within that covered period. So very, very important. And and as we get into some of our businesses that are a little bit more complex, you're doing the 3508, there's rules and regulations with POs, certain expenses, especially with our second round of PPP, of what you could use as far as perishables and things like that. So like I said, we're not going to take a lot of time. We're not going really in depth. This is just overall. So if you find that you're going to be one of those 3508 situations, it's really good to have somebody go through that with you. That form can be quite cumbersome. You have a couple worksheets in there to make sure that you're covering all that. You have the documentation. Everything's going to go to your lender. Your lenders have PPP advisors there as well. And they should be able to also help walk through the process of what you're going to need to make sure you get your loan forgiven. So remember, forgiveness is not a given. You have to qualify for it and you have to apply for it. And those time periods are extremely, extremely important. Your covered period is extremely important to know. So, and we have our safe harbors. So if you're in those situations, we'd love to talk to you more if you have additional questions. So Catherine, I'm going to leave it at that for right now because it is a lot of information and PPP can go quite in depth. And like I said, with some situations, it's a lot more complex than others. So, we are always open to being available. That's what the Small Business Development Center is there for. We do provide our services at no cost. We are located in Tarrant County. If you're not in Tarrant County, then there is an SBDC office that services you, and we can help you find someone to help you navigate your forgiveness process. Because, of course, we want you to be able to do that. That's going to be very beneficial for your business.
Well, thank you, Cindy. I appreciate you taking time to give us some knowledge and information regarding the direct forgiveness portal, which is listed here below for those of you who have loans that are $150,000 and less. This can help you get through that process pretty quickly. So thank you for taking time and giving this that overview. I truly appreciate it.
Catherine, I think we did a PPP direct portal webinar a couple weeks ago. Can you direct people to where they might be able to find that? We went through the step-by-step guide in doing that. Is there a place we can navigate that and share that?
Yes, we did do a PPP portal forgiveness webinar, and it is on our Facebook page. So if you go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Tarrant SBDC and go to videos, you can find that there, or you can find it on YouTube as well. And so with that, we're going to conclude today's session. Thank you, Cindy, for your time. And just a reminder, don't forget that you can call us at 817-515-2600, or you're welcome to check out our website and sign up for a business advisor there on our jot form that's listed on that homepage at www.tarrantsbdc.org. And please, we would appreciate it if you would take time to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. Our handle at each of those social platforms is at Tarrant SBDC. If there's anything else that we can provide you to help you with your business journey, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here for you. Thank you so much for joining us live today. And if you found us during this recording, please feel free to leave us your questions. We will answer them as soon as we can. Thank you.